Not finished with me yet. With that bouncing around in your head every single Sunday we're here. What a posture it would be to consider ourselves before God clay that he can mold. I don't know how you think about like coming to church and how you think like why you're here. But I would hope that somewhere in there's something like that you are clay and God is the potter and he wants to mold you and shape you and he's not done with you yet, which I actually think is really encouraging. That's one of the things I used to pray all the time was thanking God for not giving up on me yet. So happy that he's still working. Man, sometimes, I don't know what it is. Some baptisms get to me more than others, and it's just so cool to see God work in Amanda's life like that. I got water on me. But there is nothing better for a pastor than to preach a sermon with baptism water on them. There is nothing better than that. So, I like it. All right. We're continuing our Love Handles series today, the hard work of a good relationship. It's actually week 5. It's been really cool. I've really enjoyed. I love relationship series. There's just something about them. God seems to do a lot of work in them. I've been saying every single week, hey, if you're single, this isn't just for couples. This is a relationship, all relationship series. And I think most of the single people have mostly believed me, right? You kind of believe me, but you don't. So today specifically though, this is less about a romantic one-on-one relationship. This is more going to be about your relationships that you have out in your life. So I want to start, I'll just be honest. It's something that's kind of weird in the Bible. You know, there are weird things in the Bible. I think we need to be honest about that sometimes. There's stuff in there that you're I don't get that. And this one, if you read this one for the first time, if you were say you were just reading through the Bible and you got to these 2 verses, you'd read these 2 and you would have to stop and go, wait a minute. Did I just read? That doesn't make any sense. You do the thing where you're did I just have a dyslexic moment? Did I read that wrong? That can't possibly be what it just said. So I want to show it to you. I'll show you the first verse first, and then you should probably immediately you'll see what happens in the second one. So here's the first verse. It's in Proverbs 26:4. It says this: "Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are." Have you ever argued with somebody that was just, we'll say dumber than you? And when you got done with the argument, you felt dumber? Like you got some dumb on you and you couldn't get it off? It just felt like it was sticky, contagious somehow, and now I'm dumb because you're dumb and I had an interaction with you. That's what this verse is talking about. If you've ever had that happen, it's very, very good observation. All right, so here's another deep observation. You know what comes after Proverbs 26:4? Proverbs 26:5. That's next. So, I have to point that out because you're not going to believe what it says. Verse 5. "Be sure to answer the foolish argument of fools, or they will become wise in their own estimation." Now, before I deal with the obvious difference here, this one, standing by itself, says, hey, you ever seen somebody say something, you've been in, somebody says something foolish, or, hypothetically, on a social media website, you see somebody post something that's just foolish, beyond foolish. You know that compelling feeling you have that you want to be I got to say something. I got to tell them that they're stupid or they won't know that they're stupid and they'll go around being stupid for everybody else. And I want to stop the stupid right here. I'm going to help them out. You know that feeling you have? That's what this verse is talking about. You feel the need to tell somebody that's dumb. Now, you back up and look at these though. These are right one after the other. Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you'll get it on you. But then be sure to answer the foolish argument of fools, or they're gonna think they're not foolish. Now, if you just look at that, you might be tempted to go, wait a minute. Is that like a contradiction? Like, ooh, I caught the Bible. Look, the Bible says that there's a contradiction in here. But here's the thing. I think if you said that to the guy who wrote it, like if you sat down and had a conversation, said, hey man, what's up with this? You like contradict yourself. I think he would give you like this look like, have you ever made a sarcastic comment to somebody and them not get it? And they totally you meant the opposite of what you said, but you're like sitting there going, how did you not, you even used my sarcastic voice and you still didn't get that I was being sarcastic. I think what the writer would say here is, man, if you think I contradicted myself, you are missing the obvious point that I'm trying to make. And here's the point. It's really hard to have a fool in your life, right? This is his way of saying, hey, no matter what, if you have a foolish person in your life, you're gonna have a difficult time. If you go to confront them, you're gonna get some of their foolishness, or you're just gonna feel dirty after that conversation. If you don't, they're not gonna even know they're foolish and they're gonna keep being foolish. No matter what, it's difficult to have a fool in your life. He's pointing out the catch-22 that you're put in. So, I wanted to point that out because these verses are back to back. So it wasn't like he went to the bathroom and like forgot that he wrote the first verse and then wrote the second verse. You know what I'm saying? Like that. This is on purpose to prove a point. Now, keep that tension in your mind because these verses do kind of create a tension, right? You're like, now when I have a fool, what am I supposed to do? Well, whichever path you pick, it's going to be hard. Keep that tension in your mind because now I want to jump to Galatians. And we're going to look at some verses in Galatians that are really important to your relationships. Understanding the dynamic in these verses is massively important to how you deal with the people in your life. But at first, it's going to look like those verses in Proverbs, okay? This is going to look the same. And I want to, out the gate, I actually kind of want to magnify the apparent contradiction. So first I want to show you, it's in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, but I'm going to show it to you in the King James Version, okay? Because it's always more clear in the King James Version. Here's what it said. That was my sarcastic voice, you didn't tell. Bear ye one another's burdens. Kanye, bear ye one another's burdens. So it says you're supposed to bear other people's burdens. Now, I want to put that one, and I want to jump, and I want to show you Galatians 6:5, which is just a couple of verses later. It says this, verse 5, for every man shall bear his own burden. Bear one another's, but you're supposed to bear other people. No, but every man's supposed to bear his own. Well, which is it? Again, you could look at it and go, is that contradictory? Well, there's a couple of reasons it's not, and we're going to go into a couple of them. But I do want to point out, I think at least one of the things the writer's doing here, and this is Paul that wrote this, it's kind of the same as Proverbs. I think he's pointing out that, hey, it's hard to love people. It's hard to love people. It's hard to love your neighbor like Jesus said to. It's hard to be in relationships with other people because you have experienced the tension between these two verses. You experience it all the time, whether you're even aware that you're experiencing it, you experience it all the time. You fight between these two things. When you pull up to a stoplight and there's a homeless person standing next to the road, you're going back and forth between these two things. Is that a burden I'm supposed to carry, or is that a burden that they should be carrying on their own? You're having that battle right there. You're having that battle. When your phone rings at midnight again for that person who's going to need to talk to you about this thing they're going through, the tension between hitting the green button and the red button and the green button and the red button, your tension is between these two things. Do I help them bear this burden, or do I let them bear their own burden? When that family member hits you up and says, hey, I just need to borrow a little bit of money, you know? And they've done it, this is like the third or fourth time, that your decision is between these two things, right? You're like, is that a burden I'm supposed to help carry, or do I need to let them carry that? You experience this tension all the time. And those are big examples, but you have little ones as well. You are constantly in between. Is this a burden that they should be carrying on their own, or am I supposed to help them with that? You're dealing with this tension all the time. And I'm going to point this out throughout the sermon. This is a tension. And I think it was Andy Stanley that said, there are tensions to be managed and there are problems to be solved. Sometimes you got to solve a problem. Sometimes you got to manage attention. I think this is a tension. You're not supposed to resolve this. This is going to be a thing that you deal with in your life. You can't solve the problem. You're not going to be able to, there's no magic equation that you're going to be able to resolve this. You have to manage this. Is it a burden that they're supposed to carry, or am I supposed to carry it with them? And you got to navigate it, because if you want to have good relationships, I think you got to get good at navigating this, right? You're going to have to get good at this, because it's going to be thrust upon you constantly. You're going to be dealing with this kind of thing, so you have to get good at navigating this tension. All right, I want to read these verses. I'm going to actually read more. I just read parts of the verses there, and I want to read it in a different version than the King James. So Galatians chapter 6, starting in verse 2, it says this: carry each other's burdens. No more Kanye, he's gone. And in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they're something when they're not, they deceive themselves. So he says, hey, carry each other's burdens. And then it even says, what? In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. And basically what that means is that if you want to be like Jesus, you need to help people carry their burdens in their life. That's a big reason, right? If you want to be like Jesus, you got to help carry some burdens that other people have in their lives. And then verse 3, he kind of throws a little shot in there. If anyone thinks they're something when they're not, he's basically saying, if you think you're too good to help people, you're way wrong. Like you better not have the attitude like, I'm above that. Like they need to figure their stuff out because I'm not there anymore. He's like, nah, that's not the attitude you should have. And then verse 4, it takes a little bit of a turn. Verse 4, each one should test their own actions, and they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load. So the first two verses we looked at kind of had the spotlight on others, right? And then it shifts in these ones and it kind of puts the spotlight back on you, and the focus here is on you. Hey, test your own actions. Don't compare yourself to other people, and carry your own load. And if you're astute, you notice there's a difference here, right? The King James used burden and burden. Here, it used burden and load. And I'm not trying to dunk on the King James Version too much today, but it is weird that there are two, and actually in the original language, there's two different Greek words used there, but in the King James, they translated it into one English word. It kind of makes no sense. So it's baros in verse 2, and it's phartion in verse 6. I know, I'll give you time to write that down. That's really important to your life. I just wanted to prove to you that I was smart. And I wrote it phonetically so I wouldn't mispronounce it for when you people look it up later and say, did he pronounce it right? I did. Because I have a little button on my computer that tells me how to pronounce it. I shouldn't reveal that stuff to you. I should let you think I'm smarter than that. So the first one, that baros word in verse 2, it carries the idea of like a boulder, something really big that gets dropped into someone's life. It even kind of carries the idea of a surprise. Like it happened, and they've got this thing, and their legs are shaking underneath the weight of it. The word used in verse 6, where we're supposed to carry our own, the word for load, it has the idea of like a knapsack, like a lunchbox, like a thing that you should be carrying on you're responsible for that. So there are actually two words, and it helps us differentiate between these two things. Because there are times when circumstances just happen, right? And something gets dropped onto your life, and it's too big. It's too big. Sometimes you can't even pick it up, let alone carry it. And then other times there's just life, and you got to carry it. So what this verse is saying is that it is our Christian duty. If you're a Christian, if you say, hey, I trust in Jesus, I follow Jesus, that's me, then you have a Christian duty to help other people when you see them have burdens in their life. You got to get your shoulder up underneath that thing, and you're supposed to help them carry that. It is your Christian duty. And it is your Christian duty to carry your own load. Both those things are true. Both those things are true. Now, that's helpful. It relieves some of the tension, but not all of the tension. The problem comes when you try to answer the question. And you ask it all the time. Again, it's whether you mean to or not, whether it's conscious or not, you're asking this question. The question is, what's the difference between a burden and a load? Right? That's the question. Now that you know they're a little bit different, that there's things that are too big for somebody to carry, and there's stuff that they are supposed to carry, it's supposed to be on them. Now you have to ask the question, well, which is which? How can I tell in the people's lives that are around me? How can I tell this is a burden and that's actually a load? I should be helping with this, and you know what? They should be carrying that one on their own. How can you tell? That's the question. You deal with this all the time. Now, I know something about you. I want to point something out about you. You have, when it comes to this question, you have a bent towards one side or the other. You are going to more naturally pick one or the other. When you're looking at a thing, and you say, okay, is this a burden or a load? Some of you are gonna more naturally go, oh, that's a burden, I gotta help them with that. Some of you are over here. You're gonna, and it's kind of a gradient. It can be mild all the way to pretty severe, where you're looking around going, oh, everything's a burden. I gotta help everybody. I gotta get my shoulder under this. I gotta get my shoulder under that. I'm gonna help. I'm gonna help. Oh, you need, the moment you're pulling up to that stoplight, you're digging around in the center console. What can I can't just give them change. You're pulling stuff out of your wallet. You're handing them like used gift cards because you just can't help yourself. You gotta help. So you have a bent towards seeing burdens. And then there's others of you, you have a way of seeing everything as a load that somebody should carry. You can kind of go there. So when you're pulling up to the stoplight, you're pretending to play with the radio because you don't want to make eye contact with the person. But in your head, you're thinking, well, they made decisions that put them there, right? They're there because they did something. You know, I used to, when I was in college, there was this one highway exit down in Canton. I went to Malone. There's this one highway exit that I always got off on, that like this side, there would be a guy asking for money, and then I'd look down this way, and there was a Burger King sign that said now hiring. And I always had this tension between the two, which is crappy, which shows you I'm on this side. But on this side, you're always looking at things in a way to say they should be carrying that. They should be carrying that. And again, there's mild to extreme. So which side are you? Are you, when you see people in your life having stuff going on, are you more likely to see it as a burden that you're supposed to get your shoulder under? Or are you more likely to see it as a load that they need to pick that thing up and carry it? Which one are you? Now here's my problem. Now I have to preach 2 sermons. And this is your fault. If you all just had the same problem, I could preach 1, but now I have to preach 2 because I got to preach to you people over here who can't help but see a burden every single place that there's something going on, and I got to preach to you heartless people over here who always explain stuff away, of which I am one of them. So I'll be preaching to myself. So I have to preach 2, so I hope you didn't care about the Browns game today. I'm just kidding. You probably don't, but all right. So I guess I'll talk to you first. The people who tend to see things as burdens. You're compelled to get your shoulder underneath every single thing that you see in your life. You're a helper, and you just can't help but not be a helper. That's where you're at. Here's what I'll say to you. It is a good thing to help people with their burdens. It is. It is. And like the verses said, that's a Jesus-like thing. Your instinct to want to go help people, that's awesome. I don't want to step on that. I don't want to crush that. That's amazing. I love that your natural instinct is to give and to serve and to help. That's a great thing. Don't lose that. But while it's a good thing to help other people with their burdens, it's actually a bad thing to help them with their loads. And here's what I mean by that. And I'm just like, wait a minute, did you just tell me it's a bad thing to help somebody, Pastor Adam? That sounds wrong. It does sound wrong. But there is a distinction between the two, and that's why Paul wrote this. Burdens, helping is a good thing. Loads, it's actually your helping is hurting them. So let me give you an example. This is just a hypothetical example. It may or may not be real in somebody's life in this room. But let's say there was a 5-year-old boy. I don't know any. A 5-year-old boy who, when he comes in from school, he takes off his shoes and just throws them up in the air wherever they may land. He drops his book bag, he takes his coat off and just drops it. He runs into the pantry, gets a snack, and then goes and sits in front of the TV. And then let's say there's a mom who goes and she runs and she picks up the shoes and she puts them where they belong. She grabs the backpack. She gets the homework out. She sets it all nice out on the table. And she says, sweetie, it's time to come over and do your homework. And he gives her crap because he wants to watch TV, and they fight for a little bit. And then finally he comes over and he sits down and he starts working, and she helps him with every single problem. Just like, okay, buddy, here's how you do this, and here's how you do this, and here's how you do this. And she doesn't want to use her own handwriting, so she's trying to let him write. But mostly, let's be honest, she's doing all the homework. And then she puts it back in the book bag. He runs back to the TV. She puts it all away nice and ready for him to go the next day. Did she help him? That's a trick question. Did she help him? Well, kinda. Yeah, she helped him. She helped him in every which way he could be helped. So here's the difference, though. And here's the question you have to ask if you're on this side, if you're that. And I know that I'm intentionally drawing a very extreme version of that. At least I hope it's extreme. If you're helping in the short term in a way that will hurt them in the long term, then it's wrong. And that's why that story is wrong. Because yeah, you just helped a 5-year-old out, man. His night was awesome because you helped him. But you weren't carrying a burden, you were carrying his load. You know who hates you, if that's you? His future wife. She hates you. You don't even know it. She's down in Mosaic Kids right now. She's 5. She hates your guts. You don't even know it yet. Because if you're doing that, you know what you're setting her up for? And you know who else? His future boss. You think that's going to fly? Hey, buddy, did you get your work done? No? Oh, come here. I'll help you out. No, you're fired, right? You are helping him in the short term, but you're actually hurting him in the long term. And this is the thing you have to work out. If you live on this side and your tendency is to say, I want to help, I'm here for this burden, this is one of the tensions you have to work out is this help in the short term actually going to hurt them in the long run? You have to work that out. And usually, it's not helping in a situation, it's the chronic thing that you're going back and helping again and again and again and again. Because again, like I said, in the actual verses, the word kind of carries the idea of something that gets dropped on you, and it's a thing that happened. It's not hey, I need some money. Okay. A couple of weeks go by. Hey, man, I need some money. Okay. Hey, man, I need some money. Like, that is not the same thing. Then your helping might be hurting because they need to be able to stand on their own feet over here. And if you take that from them, what you're basically making yourself, you are playing a role when you do that. You are playing, I'll be honest, you're trying to play the role of God. You're making yourself indispensable to them. Now they need you, not like a good kind of need, like an unhealthy kind of need where they can't function if you're not there. And that's not supposed to be the way it is. They're supposed to need God, not you. And the other thing so there's a lot of different flavors over on this side. But I'll also tell you that there's a kind of person who lives over here who the reason they're there is because, not necessarily because they like enjoy helping people, because they're almost afraid not to. A little tortured by this, that you're constantly saying yes to people because you're afraid of what they'll do if you say no. And you don't want to say, no, man, I can't help you with that because you're afraid that it's going to hurt the relationship, so you keep doing it. But I just want you to know that's not a real relationship. They're using you, and they know it. Do you know that? Okay, this is a secret. I forgot to tell the 9 a.m. worship experience this. There are people who have a sense about the kind of, like, they can tell if you're this. There are people who know that you're this. They can tell that you're a kind of person who gets your shoulder under burdens. They can smell you from a mile away, and they'll use it to manipulate you because they know your instinct is to help. They know you're going to be there. So they're just going to keep asking. You're the only one who can say no. And if you're doing it because you only care about, oh man, I just don't want somebody to be mad at me. Oh, you got to drop that. You got to drop that. That's not a real relationship anyways. And then the last thing I'll say to you if you live on this side, your tendency is to get your shoulder under all these burdens. There's a problem with that instinct. there are too many burdens for you to get your shoulder underneath. Do you know that? That there are too many in this world. You could, especially this time of year. It was hilarious. During the candlelight walk, we had one of the carriages right outside here, and we were doing stuff. I walked out, and just down the road here, the Salvation Army had, I kid you not, like 10 kettles set up in a row down the street. And I was like, I don't get that. Like, I feel like the first one maybe had some stuff in it, but how did the fifth one get anything in it? Because there's just so many. But for some of you, you have this compulsion. You've been like, do I have 10 ones? I can put one in each one because I want to help every single need. The problem is there are too many for you. So if your instinct is to constantly be getting your shoulder under burdens, and if you look for burdens, you're going to find them. It can be legitimate, real, I need to help. But here's where you need to know you need to stop. If you've got your shoulder under so many burdens that you're putting your load down in order to hold all these burdens, you're trying to carry too many burdens. You're trying to help too many people. You have to be able to carry your own. Now, there's some times where you got to put it down for a day or two or a short season, but you have to be able to pick that back up, your own stuff. Because if you're sacrificing yourself completely for long periods of time to help everybody else, you're eventually going to hurt because you're going to collapse. Your legs are shaking under the weight of everyone else's burdens, and you're not even carrying your own load. You can't help everyone. So you have to pray through this. This is a tension you're going to have to manage. Am I doing this in the short term but hurting them in the long run? Am I doing this because I just need to be needed? Or am I doing this in such a way that it's actually going to hurt me in the long run? Those are the tensions you have to manage on this side. Everyone over on this side said amen to all of that, right? And now I'm coming for you. So, if you're more on this side, and I know this side really well, because I'll be honest, this side's me. I tend to view things as loads, like you should be able to handle that. You should be carrying that. That's on you. I tend to kind of go this way. And like, if you're sitting out there and looking at the two, like this side wants to help everybody and this side like doesn't want to help anybody. This side gets painted really bad, but it's not all that. You could argue that this side really cares about the short term, but this side actually cares more about the long term. Because if somebody's cars break down, their question is, hey, how can I help? Can I give you, I know a mechanic. This side, you know what we ask? Were they changing their oil? Right? If somebody says, hey, I need some money, you're like, how much? How can we help you? How can we do it? This side over here, we're like, do you have a budget? Do you own a Dave Ramsey book? No? Then I'm not helping. We have this tendency to say, our view is not in the short term. We're hoping to put them in a place where they can succeed in the long run, which usually gets us to not help them in the short run. So if this is you over on this side, what I need you to consider is that there is a such thing as burdens that are too big that we are commanded as Christians to help with. There's a such thing. It does exist. And the reason I say that is because, and again, I know this because I have the ability to do it. I can talk myself into believing that every single thing that I see people going through my life is ultimately a load that they need to carry. I can talk myself into it. I really can. And I'm just admitting it to you because I'm trying to help some people in this room. I'm already worked through this. I'm just totally in my past. Does that make you feel better? But if I pull up to a stoplight and there's a homeless person standing next to me, I have the ability to say to myself, well, they made this choice, and this choice, and that's why they're there, and they need to learn that, like, the choices that they made if I help them, I'm going to actually be hurting them. I have the ability to do that. If somebody's going through relational trouble, I'm like, well, if they love each other like Jesus, they wouldn't be going through. Like, I have the ability to turn everything into a load. And the reason I'm telling you this is because if you're on this side, you can't do that. The reason these verses exist is because, again, if you want to be like Jesus, somebody in your life is going through something that Jesus actually wants you to help with. That he actually put you there for that reason, that you're supposed to get your shoulder up underneath there and help them. You're there for that reason. So don't talk yourself out of every single one. It can't be true that nobody in your life has a burden that you're supposed to help with. It can't be true, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is about that story that you tell yourself. You have a story that you're telling yourself about the people who are going through things in your life. You have a story. You're telling yourself, well, they did this and they did this and they did this, and that's why they're there, right? And you're like, sure that your story is the right story, right? So let me read a verse to you. It's in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. Finally, all of you should be of one mind. Sympathize with each other, love each other as brothers and sisters, be tenderhearted, and keep a humble attitude. The story you're telling yourself about the person who's going through the thing, does it have the flavor of that verse? Is there any sympathy in it at all? Is there any love there? Is it tender-hearted? Are you being humble with that story? Can you tell yourself a different story about what they're going through that has sympathy in it, that is tender-hearted, that has love in it? You got to tell a different story. And then the last thing I'll say to you if you're over here is, I know you do this. You know that the golden rule, it's in the Bible. Treat others as you want to be treated, right? Because you want to stand on your own 2 feet, you say, hey, if this person needs help, well, I wouldn't ask for help. So you're actually saying, I'm following the golden rule. I wouldn't ask for help in that situation. I wouldn't be asked for money. I wouldn't be doing that. I'm not doing anything here by not helping them that I would be wanting as them. And I want to say that is awesome, and I get that. You should be thankful to God that he gave you some strengths in those areas. But you also need to know that not everyone's as strong as you. And you need to have some compassion on the people who maybe didn't have parents who taught them how to handle money and didn't have a great home life and teach them how to deal with relationships, and they're not as far along as you. So don't use that. There's this other thing that Jesus said. He said, I give you a new commandment, that you love them like I loved you. So instead of saying, well, I wouldn't want that help, how about loving them like Jesus? Jesus loved sacrificially. Jesus loved people even when they didn't deserve it. So that's the thing you need here. Now, that's helpful with these verses. Burdens, loads. But it actually still doesn't fully answer the question. What's the difference between a burden and a load? Wouldn't it be cool if at the end of the book of Galatians, there was like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet that had burden and load, and it just gave the list of everything that you could possibly be dealing with. And when the family member calls, you could be like, hold on a second. What's the problem now? Oh, I'm sorry, that's a load. No, boom. Like that would be really cool. But there isn't. And it's not an accident, right? If God wanted to give us lists, he would have done it. But even if there was a list, you got to be honest, there's ways to find, I don't know if that applies here. You'd still be having to work through some stuff, even if you had a list. So the question, is this a burden or a load? Am I supposed to get my shoulder under it, or do I need to, I still love them, but I need to let them carry this one? I think the most definitive answer I'll give you is back in chapter 5. Galatians chapter 5, verse 25. Since we are living by the Spirit, let us follow the Spirit's leading in every part of our lives. I think the reason God didn't give you a chart for these things is because he actually wants you to rely on him in these situations. So no matter which one you are, I guess I would just say, I think you need to slow down on your instincts. And maybe that's what God wants. Maybe what God really wants when you pull up to that stoplight, instead of you people over here, I gotta get some change, and you people over here going, oh my God, somebody texted me, I'm gonna ignore you, homeless person. Instead of you doing either one of those instantly, the first thing you should do is pray and say, all right, Lord, which one is it? Should I help him? Should I not? Should I give him something? Should I not? And what should I give him? I carry money in my wallet that is only for that reason. And I just kind of listen. all right, Lord, who am I supposed to give this to? Like, it's not in there for any other reason but that. And I'm always looking for it. But I ask. And I think he wants you to rely on him. When you get that phone call at night, should I hit the red button or the green button? Should I answer or not? Don't make pray. Rely on the Spirit. You need God to direct you in this stuff. You need his wisdom in this. Because maybe there isn't a hard and fast rule. Maybe he wants to direct you however he wants in those situations. You got to walk by the Spirit. You need God. He wants you to wrestle with these. He doesn't want you to flip it into automatic pilot as you're dealing with the people in your life. He wants you to lean in. He wants you to invest in this. He wants you to work through these things. He wants you to rely on him. All right, and all that. Let me also say this. There's more than a few people in this room who here I am talking about burdens and helping people with burdens. And you guys need to be careful about helping burdens and you need to help with more. And all you're sitting here thinking is, Pastor Adam, that's awesome. You want me to help with other people's burdens. My life is so heavy, I can't even get my head up to see that other people are dealing with stuff. I'm the one with the burden right now. And maybe that's where you are. You're the one sitting here with this thing on your back and you're like, I can't do that. I can't help. I've got to deal with my own stuff. You're carrying something too heavy for yourself. So I'm going to show you this verse in Matthew chapter 11. It's Jesus talking here, starting in verse 28. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens. Is that you? He said he wanted you to come. And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. What a phrase. Rest for your soul. That's deep. And some of you, listen, before you ever get to the point where you can help anybody in any situation, you need to be filled up on the inside. You need Jesus, man. You can't do this. You can't help others if you're not filled up by God already. So what he said here is he wants you to come to him. He wants you to come to him. He specifically is speaking to you if you're like, I'm overwhelmed right now. I've got so much going on. I can't even handle my own stuff, let alone help somebody else. He wants you to come to him. And something spiritual happens. And I don't know about you, but I know in my life, when I'm rested, I'm real strong and I can handle a lot. But when I'm tired, I am worthless. I'm a bad husband. I'm a bad dad. I'm a bad pastor. Elders, plug your ears. I'm a bad everything when I'm tired. You need to allow his Spirit to fill you up. You need God to be able to do this. You need him. You need him. And that's the thing, right? That I want you to see this, that like, if he's calling you to help carry burdens in your life and you're sitting there going, I don't think I can. That's the right response. He wants you to say, I can't do this. Good. Now let me help you help them. Now let me pour my Spirit into you so that you have something there to be able to pour out into somebody else's life. He wants that. So worship team, why don't you guys come up here? They're going to sing, and like, what I want you to think is, if you're over here, I think you need to be asking God for wisdom, because maybe you've got some ongoing, I'm carrying a lot of burdens that other people have right now, and God's going to start pointing some out that you need to maybe say, all right, I'm going to get out from underneath that one. And you need to pray for wisdom, because that's a big deal and you know it, and you're scared to even think about that. But maybe God's directing you in that place. And if you're over here, there's some burdens in your life that God's placed before you and you're not picking them up, and God's gonna nudge you and say, get your shoulder under that. You're supposed to help that person. And then if you're here and you're in the middle and you're saying, I don't know if I can help anybody, man, just ask him to fill you up. You know, we can do it like that. Rest for your soul. You don't need a nap for that. You need God to move. That's all you need. You need the Holy Spirit to do something in your heart. He can do that. No, it's impossible. Yeah, he's God. That's what he does. So pray for that. Pray with me. Jesus, we want to be like you. We want to be like you, Lord. I pray for the people who are the helpers, Lord. Give them the courage and the wisdom to say no. Give them the courage and the wisdom to care about somebody in the long term, not just the short term. Lord, I pray for the people who want to view everything as a load. Lord, I pray that you would open their eyes, you would give them compassion and tenderheartedness, that you would show them just one or two burdens that you want them to get their shoulder underneath. And Lord, I pray for the soul that is on empty right now in this room. There is one. I pray for them right now. They would feel your spirit move in their soul, Lord. That you would give them that thing. You said if they come, that you would give them rest for their souls. Lord, I pray that they would come to you right now, Lord, with a bended knee and a bowed head, that they would come to you and say, I can't do this, God. I need you. I pray that you would honor that, Lord, and give them a tangible, real experience with you right now. That they have strength going forward. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.